Good morning. If everyone could please take a seat, we'll get started. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for braving the rain. My name is Cindy Arnson. I'm the director of the Latin American program here at the Wilson Center. A pleasure to welcome our distinguished panelists as well as many members of the audience who have extensive experience following and working on Haiti. As we all know, there are certain factoids that stand out when we discuss Haiti. It's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. We all know the devastating effects of the earthquake that struck Haiti in January of 2010, reducing the capital to rubble, killing and wounding hundreds of thousands of people and creating a humanitarian crisis whose effects are still felt today. This month and previous months have seen important developments both in the national and international contexts in which Haiti's development challenges are met. First, and after a long political stalemate, the Haitian parliament confirmed Dr. Gary Conille as prime minister. Conille is a respected senior development specialist with experience with the United Nations, a former aide to President Bill Clinton in his Haiti work. The ability of Haitian elites, finally, after many months of negotiation, to come together and name a prime minister is a positive sign. Similarly, earlier this year, Haitians elected a new president. The electoral process, as we know, very complicated. But Michel Martelly was inaugurated and is noted by the United Nations last week. This is the first time in Haitian history that the country has experienced a peaceful transfer of power between one democratically elected president and another from the opposition. On the international front, as we know, last week the UN Security Council renewed the mandate for the UN stabilization mission in Haiti known as MINUSTAH, created in 2004, only the most recent manifestation of many UN missions that have been in the country since the early 1990s. The Council reduced the number of military and police personnel and also noted that since the earthquake, Haiti has made considerable progress, even if serious crime remains a grave problem. But understanding all of these dynamics requires context, and we are joined today by a number of well-known experts who have decades of experience writing about, living in, and making policy towards Haiti. I'm especially delighted to welcome back to the Center Jorge Jaime, a former public policy scholar here, a distinguished fellow and chair of global governance at the Center for International Governance at CIGI in Canada. Jorge is the former Chilean ambassador to India and has a long and distinguished career in public and private life. I'm also delighted to welcome my colleague and dear friend, Johanna Mendelsohn-Foreman, a senior associate in the Americas program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, who has done significant and longstanding work on conflict resolution and post-conflict state building with a special focus on Haiti. So before turning the panel over to Johanna and our panelists, she will introduce the other speakers. I'll lay out some of the central questions that we'll be looking at and asking the contributors to the book Fixing Haiti, MINUSTAH and Beyond, which is available for your purchase outside. We'll pose a set of questions. I mean, what are the prospects over the long term and the medium term for political reconciliation, economic development, and state strengthening in Haiti? What will it take to address the country's security crisis and revitalize and construct functioning institutions? Johanna has just published an op-ed, which I think is available on the table outside, responding to the president's plans to reconstruct an army and whether this is what Haiti needs in terms of security. And, how will the country's leadership as well as members of the international community work together to continue to make progress in overcoming these longstanding difficulties? Thank you again for joining us. Johanna.
Thank you, Cindy. It's always great to be on a platform with fellow Haiti travelers and experts in this subject. I want to just say a few things. Cindy has covered a lot of the key historical data, but before I introduce the remaining panelists, I especially want to thank Jorge Jaime and his colleague Andrew Thompson, who is not with us today, for bringing us all together in 2008 to consider the question of what was going to happen to MINUSTAH. As I recall, Jorge, your book was going to be a commemorative on the 5th anniversary of MINUSTAH. MINUSTAH started in 2004, so in 2008 we were 1 year out. But I think the problem of working on Haiti, or perhaps the opportunity, and I guess I have to look at it that way, is when you write a paper on Haiti, and Cindy can tell you about this, you're always rewriting it. You are never able to finish the paper. And I feel like this is the unfinished symphony of the international community, and it's gone into the 21st century. Because every time we say we're finished, we are not finished and things evolve. Now, this is not to say, as a lawyer, I say everything is dynamic and things change. But in fact, we are always reconstructing, we are always fixing, we are always doing things. And the question I think that this book poses, which is a very good anthology, and I say with fairness that I have an article in it that Jorge was kind enough, and so are my other colleagues, authors, is when are we going to stop using the term fixing, and when are we going to let Haitians be part of the fixing process? Now, MINUSTAH, which is what the focus of the book is really about and what the original intent was about, is an ongoing and evolutionary peacekeeping operation. And if one were to dissect this, we would say that as a part of the process of the United Nations coming to terms with the dynamics of global politics, with the fact that we're no longer separating military forces, but dealing with internal civil wars, the UN has learned a lot, and Haiti has many ways been a bellwether of UN peace operations. It has been transformative in the way the United Nations thinks of dealing with conflicts not only in the Americas, which were the original peace missions in El Salvador and Guatemala, but also the way it has thought about conflict in Africa, conflict in South Asia. So in that terms, the book contributes a lot to the thinking of the evolution of the military, political, and economic thinking that has made the UN missions very important for the broader global community. But getting back to the Haiti case, as Cindy mentioned, timing is everything. We've come again to a watershed in Haitian history. We now have a new prime minister who has named a cabinet. We also have a renewal of a UN mandate. As I've counted, it's now in its 7th year, and the UN is talking about possibly going to 2014 as an end date for its mission. But these are all, as I say, open-ended, sorry for the pun, because we don't know what the state of security and stability is. We are very fortunate to have people who have been observers of this conflict, of this crisis for many, many years, who have lived it, who have served as policymakers. So let me introduce my colleagues who are sitting here. Robert Faton, who is the Associate Dean for Graduate and Academic Programs in Arts and Sciences at the University of Virginia, a well-known scholar of Haiti, but also of Africa. He holds the Julia Cooper Professorship of Government and Foreign Affairs. And, of course, we know Jorge Heine. He's been introduced by Cindy, but also my colleague and fellow traveler in the Haiti circuit, Robert McGuire, who is now a professor of international development studies at the George Washington University, and he is going to be head of the George Washington program on Latin America and hemispheric studies starting next year. So we are well served by a panel to respond to the questions that Cindy raises, but I also want to raise another one, and that is, after 7 years, aside from the learning process that the UN has achieved, which I find very important as someone who's worked on the UN, what can we go do beyond learning to basically apply what has been a lot of lessons to ensure that President Martelly and his cabinet can move forward in a 21st century and bring Haiti to some kind of stability, to some kind of peace, to some kind of a poverty alleviation, and moving forward, how do we not have to call another book Fixing Haiti? And I have to make one other comment. I am a great lover of Haitian art, and Jorge was brilliant in the cover he chose for the book. Sullivan Magloire, who was a very famous, now deceased Haitian modern painter, contributed the cover, which I understand you own the painting of, and in itself, I think it's worth purchasing the book for the cover. So I don't say that often, but I wanted to make a comment because it truly is a country with great art, great human resources, and I think the cover is demonstrative of the potential. So please, Jorge, if you'll start, and we'll go from Jorge to Robert to Robert.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, let me thank the Wilson Center and the CSIS for hosting this launch. And my co-editor, Andrew Thompson, unfortunately couldn't be here with us, but he is here in in spirit. The issue of the future and the Haitian predicament is one that I've been concerned for some 30 years now. And it seems to me, and I would like to pick up some of the things that Cynthia and Johanna said about, as my good friend Leslie Manigat would say, la conjoncture, this particular moment in which Haiti finds itself. And it seems to me a number of things are coming together, which haven't come together very often in the recent or even in the distant past in Haiti. To have the stability that comes from 5 years of a president like President Preval, to have an elected president like Michel Martelly, to have the backing of the international community that exists now, the goodwill that exists in the United States, in Canada, also throughout Latin America, in Brazil, Chile, Argentina, elsewhere. The fact that the commitment of the international community, estimates vary, but according to some figures, at least up to $10 billion were committed in March of 2010 after the tragic earthquake of January of that year. These are all things that are a remarkable window of opportunity. You could argue that windows of opportunity have been around in the past in Haiti, and they've not often been used. But this one, it seems to me, is a particularly favorable one. So it seems to me there are good reasons for being at least moderately optimistic about what can happen now in Haiti, that all of these things have come together. There is also the notion of a bit of a new impetus. There is a new special representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations, my former colleague and Chilean Foreign Minister Mariano Fernandez, who spoke at the center here a few months ago, who has been working very hard with the Haitian government and the Haitian community to move things forward. Now, on MINUSTAH, which is one of the main things we focus on in the book. MINUSTAH has not had a good year, to put it mildly. And for those of you who follow Haiti in detail, between the cholera epidemic, the video of the Uruguayan peacekeepers, which was described by one columnist in The Guardian as the United Nations Abu Ghraib, which it seemed to me was slightly over the top, to put it mildly. But it gives you an idea of the sort of reaction that is elicited out there by what the MINUSTAH troops are doing in Haiti. But I would like to say this. It is very important, picking up on Johanna's question, it is very important to understand the following. MINUSTAH's objective from the very beginning, in its very name, was to stabilize Haiti. It was not to kickstart economic and social development in Haiti. It was to stabilize the country. Now, I don't have to tell you what happened from 1986 to 1990. In those 4 years, Haiti had 5 different governments. You had a real musical chairs game between civilian and military governments. From 2006 to 2011, you had one government, one president. Now, stability is sometimes an underrated commodity. I think it is an important commodity, and that is particularly the case in the case of Haiti. And it seems to me that was one objective that President Preval set himself as well. Again, he received a lot of flack for his approach to managing governance, but it seems to me his objective of stabilizing the country was achieved, and that is something we shouldn't underrate. Now, that said, that is obviously not enough, and the question is now how to move ahead on the reconstruction front and on the development front, and how to lift the standard of living for Haitians who have been having such a difficult time, particularly since the earthquake, but also before. Now, the other question that is very important, it seems to me, is the question of timing and what will happen with MINUSTAH now. there is now an understanding that there'll be a drawdown, and Brazilian Defense Minister Celso Amorim has indicated that, and also the Secretary General of the United Nations has spoken about that. There was, of course, an increase in the number of troops after the earthquake, and now that there will be a drawdown. Again, more important, it seems to me, than the drawdown itself, which it seems to me is a sensible thing to do, is the notion of having an exit strategy. Part of the problem that has existed until now, and MINUSTAH has been there now for 7 years, is that it wasn't apparent that there was an exit strategy. And here, for example, I can speak particularly about the debate that has taken place in Chile on this. As you know, Chile has played an important role in MINUSTAH. It has had 2 of the special representatives that the Secretary General has appointed. And Chile, of course, sent in troops in March of 2004 with Canada, France, and the United States. That is long before MINUSTAH itself was established, in a move that was quite controversial at the time, that generated quite a bit of political infighting in Chile itself. The troops were actually sent before the Senate could give its approval, which, you know, is somewhat iffy, as you can understand. And partly as a result of that, whenever Chile has to renew the mandate of its troops, we have a very old-fashioned constitution which says that every 6 months the troops that are abroad, their mandate needs to be approved by the Senate. There's a controversy. Well, is this indefinite? How long will we be there? And these are legitimate questions. And it seems to me, obviously, they reach long beyond the confines of the Chilean parliament. So it is important to have an exit strategy. Now, my own view is that, again, there have been a number of Haitian politicians who have asked for MINUSTAH's removal right away. My view is that this is something that should be done over time. The deadline of 2014 has been mentioned. My own view is probably around 5 years down the line. But the main thing is that there be an exit strategy. Again, it seems to me it's important to keep in mind it's not just a question of deadlines, self-imposed deadlines, but also of, there's an expression in Spanish, metas y no plazos, which means achieving certain objectives before actually leaving. So that, it seems to me, is an important point to keep in mind. Now, the other thing that I find very interesting is the debate on how to move forward, both on reconstruction and on development. We were fortunate enough to have Paul Collier, one of the world's leading development economists, now at Oxford University, formerly with the World Bank, provide us with a foreword for our book. And Paul Collier, as you may know, he came up with a plan, which he dubbed a Marshall Plan for Haiti, on how to deploy the resources that would be available from the international community to really kickstart development in Haiti. And there are some very specific issues that he puts on the table, arguing that, contrary to what some people might think, Haiti has a number of very significant comparative advantages. Its very central location in the Caribbean, a skilled labor force, close access to close proximity to the main market in the world, the United States, privileged access to that market. All of these things can be deployed to really kickstart Haitian economic development in a way that hasn't happened until now. Infrastructure, development infrastructure, is a theme he develops particularly in his paper, decentralizing Haiti away from what some people have called the Republic of Port-au-Prince, the development of the garment and textile industry that was doing very well in the 1980s. I remember hosting a seminar at the Caribbean Studies Center I used to lead in Puerto Rico, CISCLA, and I invited Paul Latortue, the noted Haitian economist, to give a talk. And the title, somewhat provocative title of his talk, was Haiti, a New Taiwan. Now, this sounds a bit far-fetched today, but in the early 80s, this was something that was somehow in the air, and it seems to me it's something that can be picked on again. Now, what I find very interesting from a strictly sort of analytical point of view, if you will, is how this proposal by Paul Collier, that makes so much sense to me, has generated quite a controversy among various colleagues, and this is particularly so in Canada. Some people, of course, say, whenever I hear the word Marshall Plan, I reach for my gun, because they don't like it, and they have this view that it's just an approach of throwing good money after bad. And so some specialists in fragile states have argued that if you look at the record in Haiti on how international cooperation has been used, and the various figures, some people say up to $9 billion has gone to Haiti in the past few decades, that it is not a good idea to deploy a Marshall Plan, quote unquote, in Haiti. And they argue, the argument gets relatively sophisticated. The argument is, once the money, the resources that are coming in from abroad reach a certain percentage within GDP, say beyond 14-15%, the amount of waste that starts to take place and the inefficiencies that are generated by this enormous amount of money that is coming in are such that it's just not worth doing. And what they have advocated is that, in fact, Haiti should be given a lower priority, and that perhaps it is time to start, drawing down not just the forces of MINUSTAH, but also the international resources that have been allocated to Haiti. Now, my own view is that it's quite mistaken, and the last thing we need is to sort of give up on Haiti from this line of argument. But it seems to me it's important to keep this in mind, because this window of opportunity will not be here forever. It is not like these resources and the goodwill of the international community and the interest of many people will be here forever. It's important to take advantage of it now, and which is why I'm so encouraged by the fact that there is now a prime minister, that there is now a government in Haiti, which hadn't happened for quite a few months, and that was becoming a real problem. Now, the other thing that now getting to my own sort of disciplinary field, which is political science, what I find fascinating is the following. When I first started visiting Haiti in the late 70s and early 80s, the approach towards Haiti, say within the Caribbean Studies Association, which I was active, was to look at Haiti as a unique social formation, which it is, of course. Mm-hmm. The first Black Republic, French-speaking country in the midst of Spanish and English-speaking archipelago. On the forefront, the first successful slave rebellion in so many ways in the Americas. And so to focus on its unique culture, its religion, so on. So anthropologists and sociologists and historians focus on these various dimensions, the voodoo culture, its art, and so on, looking at the uniqueness and the idiosyncrasies of Haiti. And that leads to a certain approach, a certain way of looking at what is happening in Haiti. Now, what happened after 9/11, of course, is that suddenly that changed. And Haiti, from being looked at as a unique social formation in the Caribbean with all these specificities, started to be looked at with very different eyes, as a category among fragile states, and put in the same category as, say, Somalia, Afghanistan, Iraq, places from where dangers could come to the United States, to the West more generally. And that, of course, leads away from the anthropologists and the historians to, I used in one previous launch the expression, the harder social scientists, which didn't go down very well with some colleagues of mine. Political scientists and economists are now focusing on Haiti and what the challenges are and what to do. And that, of course, leads to very different lenses and very different perspectives. Now, to address some of the questions that were put by Cynthia and by Johanna, I was struck by the fact that despite the enormous challenges Haiti is facing today, and I would be the last to underestimate them, progress is being made. Last time I looked at the figures, exports in the second quarter of this year were already higher than before the earthquake. According to the World Economic Forum, although GDP in Haiti fell by 8.5% in 2010, they project that the potential for 6 to 8% growth over the next 10 years is very much there if certain decisions are made and certain measures are taken. Now, that, it seems to me, point to a key question, which is the issue of state capacity. We tend to focus on the social and economic challenges that Haiti faces, and they are very real and are very much there. But this may be my own bias, but it seems to me that what is absolutely critical to focus on as well is the question of state capacity. And there was one report, I think it was from the Urban Institute, that came to the conclusion that one of the problems in the case of international cooperation with Haiti was that it was treated by donors like just another state, without understanding, without grasping that the weaknesses in state capacity made that a real problem. Therefore, the building up of state capacity in Haiti, it seems to me, is a central challenge. And that leads to the question of security. Obviously, if a state cannot provide security, it cannot provide much else. And here, again, it seems to me it's encouraging to see that the Haitian National Police is now up, the last figures I saw, up to 10,000 men and women. I have seen some reports that say it would need to be up to 20,000 for being able to cope with law and order in Haiti. It's been an ongoing challenge. It's not easy. People have to be vetted, trained, and so on and so forth. But progress is being made. It seems to me it is very important to focus on that and get it done and have it established. And if we were able to get to that figure, to the 20,000 men and women in the Haitian National Police, I think that would be a very important step. Now, the other thing, the security sector, of course, has three legs. The other is the judiciary, which I understand is still lagging, and that is a very important challenge. And, of course, the penitentiary system. A number of prisons fell apart during the earthquake. Many prisoners fled, and that's a real problem. So these other two legs of the system need considerable attention as well. The issue of the Haitian army has been put on the table as well. It could be argued that, as any normal country, Haiti deserves to have armed forces, and that's it's a reasonable assumption. I myself served as Deputy Minister of Defense in the Chilean ministry once democracy returned, and I would be the last to argue against the need of countries having their own armed forces. Now, that said, it seems to me that today the last priority for Haiti should be building up an army. It has been extremely difficult to get the police up to 10,000, and it's still half of what it should be. So the notion that you could, in parallel fashion, when it's been so difficult to build up the police, build another security force, just in terms of bringing it up, forget who would pay for it, is quite unclear to me. Again, something like 60% of the Haitian budget today comes from abroad. Who is going to pay for this newly created Haitian army? It's very unclear to me. So that, it seems to me, is something that ought to be taken off the table as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. You've raised many very provocative points. I think people will want to respond to some of your discussion, but I'd like to move the conversation to Robert Fetron continuing on the question.
Thank you very much. Jorge has covered virtually everything, so it's difficult to know where to start. What I intended to do was to concentrate on the creation of the army and the role of MINUSTAH in Haiti. And while Jorge has covered that aspect, I may be coming from a slightly different angle, so I will go to the specifics. And as we know, in the last few weeks, a very important document was leaked to the press, and this is the so-called Politique de défense et de sécurité nationale, that is the Martelly administration's call for the creation of the so-called Conseil national de défense et de sécurité. And that Conseil national de défense et de sécurité is really a security apparatus under the president's authority. It's an apparatus which has both a civilian component and also a military and intelligence component. I will limit my comments to the military and to the surveillance components. And there are two key organs of this public force. On the one hand, you have the so-called Service d'Intelligence Nationale, and I don't know if the acronym is a very good one, it's SEN, and it's a domestic agency, and it's a spying agency. And on the other hand, what we have is the reconstituted Haitian army, which would initially have 3,500 soldiers. The initial cost of the army is supposed to be about $95 million to be underwritten by Haiti's international donors. Now, while it is clear that Martelly's initiative has encountered both domestic and international opposition, it is equally clear that powerful sectors of the Haitian elite and the political class have welcomed this development, and that virtually all Haitians, irrespective of political ideology or social class, are literally fed up with MINUSTAH. And I'm using that word in a conservative way. When you talk privately, it's not just fed up. So there is a real consensus, as it were, that MINUSTAH's presence should be terminated as soon as possible. And in fact, MINUSTAH has never been popular in Haiti. I think it was initially tolerated as a necessary evil to prevent a descent into hell. But from inception, it violated the most basic sense of sovereignty that is so cherished by Haitians. Very soon, the population saw MINUSTAH as an occupying force rather than a peacekeeping contingent. And MINUSTAH's alleged human rights violations, as well as the connections with the cholera epidemics and the recent rape of that young Haitian, well, those things have exacerbated an already tense and difficult relation between Haitians and MINUSTAH. And I met 2 years ago a young researcher by the name of Jessica Sue, who was doing research in the southwest of Haiti, in La Grandance, and there she found out that fishermen call MINUSTAH the lionfish. And they call it the lionfish because, as you know, the lionfish has invaded Haitian waters and depleted them of other fish species. And what the Haitian fisherman told her in Creole was, MINUSTAH is like, and I quote in Creole, li gen an pile couleur et li désordre en pile, which means MINUSTAH has many colors and they are extremely destructive. So that was in Grandance. It's not in Port-au-Prince, so it's far away from the core of MINUSTAH's presence. So MINUSTAH has, to a large degree from the Haitian perspective, outlived its welcome. But the absence of a competent and legitimate Haitian security organ has become the justification. for its continued presence in the country. And indeed, President Martelly, in his speech at the UN, said the following: while MINUSTAH committed unacceptable blunders, there was nothing more irresponsible and dangerous than have the mission leave without an effective national alternative. So the question now is not whether MINUSTAH can morph into a new role to stay in the country for la longue durée, but rather what kind of national alternative will be created in la courte durée to replace it. And it is the nature and role of this national alternative that have become a critical and controversial issue for Haiti's immediate future. Before examining this issue, it is important to briefly analyze both the traditional role that the Haitian army has played in the country's history and the consequences of the army's emasculation and dissolution by Aristide in the mid-90s. I would venture to say, for example, that President Préval was able to complete his term in office and reestablish a modicum of stability in spite of food riots, the earthquake, and the cholera epidemic because of MINUSTAH's presence and because of the Haitian army's absence. Haiti, had it not been, in fact, for the former, the situation would have easily degenerated into a chaotic world. And had the latter not been disbanded, it is likely that a coup and internal repression would have materialized. It seems to me, that it's very clear that the dissolution of the armed forces has really limited the possibility of coup d'etat and restrained the despotic power of the elites. So if you look at the history, when threatened, the elite has traditionally tried to use the armed forces to reestablish order and stability. Moreover, the military has historically placed its corporate interest above those of the population and taken power illegally and violently to defend those interests. Coups and counter-coups are the heavy legacy of the armed forces. It is true, however, that civilian presidential monarchs bent on imposing their absolute authority have always sought to bypass the army and create their own paramilitary forces. For instance, the Macoute, the Tonton Macoute, played a fundamental role in unleashing state violence and keeping Duvalier in power. Not only did they become a counterweight to the armed forces and neutralize the traditional capacity of the military to wage a coup d'etat, but they represented a significant popular mass of support for Duvalier's regime. So in that sense, the Macoute constituted more than just terrorizing stormtroops. Like the mafia, they exacerbated the social condition, they extracted resources and distributed them to their community of disciples. In so doing, they bought people's allegiance and gangsterized political life. Haiti's dire poverty facilitated the development of this perverse pattern of violent extortions. And Duvalier understood that scarcity could easily become a useful tool in enhancing his popularity. In fact, minuscule payoffs with promises of larger future gains for a chosen few became an attractive proposition for many who would otherwise confront a life of utter destitution. Duvalier's ruthless strategy, however, was not unique. It's a recurrent phenomenon of Haiti's history. For instance, Raoul Cédras' military dictatorship that overthrew Aristide in the bloody coup of 1991 created its troupes de choc, the so-called attachés, and the Front pour l'Avancement et le Progrès Haïtien frappé, to smother supporters of Lavalas. And when Lavalas returned to power in 1994 and disbanded the army, it unleashed its own gangs, the so-called chimères, to intimidate, harass, and brutalize its opponents. So the army's dissolution had contradictory effects. On the one hand, it debilitated the authoritarianism of the dominant elites. But on the other hand, it failed to generate the construction of democratic institutions. In fact, the dissolution of the army contributed to a vacuum of state power that came to be filled by multiple paramilitary groups which had uncertain murky, and ever-changing allegiances and chains of commands. Moreover, the official disappearance of the army was not matched by a corresponding pattern of disarmament. Former soldiers simply went underground with their weapons, only to resurface as dangerous criminal insurgents. In the meantime, particularly during Aristide's second political term, the Lavalas administration armed its own chimera to both counter these insurgents and intimidate the opposition. Ultimately, the multiplication of armed groups emasculated the state to the point of obliterating its institutional and territorial control of society. And it is this institutional decay that greatly contributed to both the forced departure of Aristide in 2004 and the eventual introduction of MINUSTAH into Haiti. While MINUSTAH represents an affront to Haitian nationalism and a somber reminder of Haitian political failures, it is at the moment the only force that can keep a relative sense of security in the country. But as I've argued earlier, MINUSTAH's time in Haiti is ending, and it has to be replaced by a new Haitian body. Now, the plan put forward by the Martelly administration seems to me dangerous. The specter of past authoritarian and repressive practices haunts its deployment. I'm afraid that a new army and a spy agency are likely to revive the seeds of authoritarianism that are still germinating in the Haitian political terrain. In other words, it is difficult to envisage a truly professional and impartial security and military apparatus in present-day Haiti. The legacy of the distant and immediate past weighs heavily against such a rosy picture. Indeed, in spite of elections, a free press, and the development of many grassroots organizations, the reality is that the deep structures of Haitian politics have changed little since 1986. Authoritarian reflexes persist. La politique du ventre, belly politics, continues to overwhelm a civic culture, and the social and material divide between rulers and privilege on the one hand and the vast majority of the population on the other hand remains as profound as ever. Moreover, the country faces no military threats, and even if it did, a reconstituted army would hardly stave them off. The strong likelihood is that an army and a spying agency would end up devouring scarce resources, stamping out dissent, silencing opponents, and ultimately becoming a tool of internal repression. Martelly, however, is intensely committed to the restoration of the army because he is bent on responding to widespread nationalistic reaction to the continued presence of foreign troops on Haitian soil, and because of his past and present associations with key figures of the military. This association cannot be ignored. Time will tell whether it prefigured the revival of the old authoritarianism and the rebirth of a new presidential absolutism. In his inaugural speech, President Martelly had already warned that he would not tolerate any social and political troubles. As he put it, and I quote, "If people think they can create disorder, loot and burn, or foment instability, I'm sorry for them because justice will deal with them." Now, while that is comprehensible, the tone was the thing that worries one, given Haiti's past. So the danger is that Martelly may assume that his electoral triumph and his indisputable popularity, as well as his image as a man of action, will give him carte blanche to do as he pleases. He may be confusing the present with his recent past, when, as the self-proclaimed Président Compas, he sang "Nous toutes, c'est Martelly," we are all for Martelly. His style and electoral campaign suggest that he is the archetype of the populist politician whose charismatic powers are capable of mesmerizing large followings into embarking into messianic and perhaps disastrous adventures. To that extent, as he likes to be called Tête Calais, rise to the presidency does raise some serious questions about Haiti's democratic future. It is clear, however, that the country cannot remain between the chiller of a potential return to the despotic past and the Charybdis of a debilitating and chaotic vacuum of power, nor should it remain the virtual trusteeship that it is. So what is to be done? MINUSTAH will and should withdraw, but the withdrawal should neither be sudden nor immediate. President Martelly was right when he declared that the UN mission had to stay until a national alternative is prepared to replace it. But I am afraid that he is wrong when he calls for the reconstitution of the army and the creation of an internal surveillance agency. Haiti's security problem is crime, and this is the business of a police force. The task at hand is to complete the process of building and professionalizing that force. While this process has been desperately slow, uneven, and full of failures, a renewed commitment to its eventual success is indispensable if Haiti is to have a democratic future. The force should be significantly larger than what it is now, but it should not be equipped with anything, I would argue, but light weapons. To take the road leading to the restoration of the military and the creation of a spying organization is an invitation to embark on a journey that is likely to end in an authoritarian destination. The deepening of democracy and the development of greater political accountability require taking an alternative road unencumbered by the military debris of the despotic past. Thank you.
Well, food for thought, Robert.
There's an op-ed right there.
Yes, I think you wrote your op-ed. From your lips to the president's ears. Anyway, I'm sure we will get even more profound points of view from Robert McGuire, who is a longtime student of Haiti politics and Haiti governance, and then we can have some, I think, really exciting discussion about the future. Thank you. Robert, go ahead.
Thank you, Joanna. And Cindy, thanks for inviting us and organizing this event. And Jorge, congratulations on the book, and to you and to Andrew. And your timing was impeccable, I think, in getting it out, as it turns out to be. I'd like to kind of broaden things and give a more broad perspective and an overview of the first 5 months of President Martelly's time in office. President Michel Martelly took office some 5 months ago at a time when Haitians were frustrated with the pace and scale of earthquake recovery, or building Haiti back better, and insecure about their future. Although they had experienced some improvements in basic citizen security, in living free from intimidation and abuse, conflict and violence, crime and impunity, over the previous several years, in the post-quake period, the erosion had occurred in that area. The institutions meant to guarantee personal safety, police, courts, prisons, government bodies, watchdog groups, remained either too weak, corrupt, dysfunctional, or simply inexistent to provide minimal security assurances. Important social and economic components of security, namely citizens being able to meet their needs through work, education, and opportunities to develop talents and be able to pursue their legitimate aspirations, remained underdeveloped. As a result, and in the absence of state capacity within Haiti, the country's citizens continue to look toward external sources, particularly NGOs and for-profit organizations, to provide for their personal, social, economic, and environmental security needs. International organizations, particularly MINUSTAH, remained essential for ensuring Haitians' public and personal safety. Without doubt, greater efforts were required to address Haiti's chronic problems with jobs, education, healthcare, and housing. The intervening 5 months have seen some but not a great deal of movement toward addressing these issues. For example, the number of Haitians living under tents in displacement camps has declined from the post-quake total of close to 1.5 million, but there still remain more than 500,000 people living in those conditions. $28 million earmarked for improved educational opportunities has been collected from the diaspora in the form of new taxes applied by the Martelly administration on international phone calls and cash transfers. But the school year began late, and President Martelly's campaign promise of massive improvements in school access for the hundreds of thousands of Haitian kids not in school that raised expectations among poor Haitians has been very slow in materializing. The Haitian National Police, as a key building block in Haiti's security equation, has been improving slowly, but as detailed in an important report released last month by the International Crisis Group, many challenges remain, paramount among them being continued commitment from both the UN and the government of Haiti over the long term to continue to strengthen this institution and its capacities. Little movement has been seen over the past 5 months to strengthen the country's other pillars of personal safety and security, particularly courts and prisons. This picture of limited or no progress over the past months is attributed to a significant extent to the less than salubrious relationship between Haiti's executive and legislative branches. Indeed, that relationship seems to have been one of mutual provocation. The poster child of this relationship has been the battle over the confirmation of a prime minister and the subsequent formation of the ministerial government that is required to put Haiti back on track. With his first two nominees rejected, President Martelly's high hopes for a productive first 100 days in office were dashed, as little to build Haiti back better was accomplished over that time, save the completion of projects initiated by the previous government. The political uncertainty enveloping Haiti, not just over the past 5 months, but throughout the preceding electoral season, worked to place Haiti's international supporters, and as Jorge mentioned, really its financiers, given their role, in a wait-and-see mode. And even though disbursements of funds pledged for the 2 years after the earthquake, a period which ends on January 12, 2012, according to the Office of the UN Special Envoy to Haiti, has now reached 43% of the $4.6 billion pledged by public entities. Little tangible change has been experienced among the roughly 80% of Haitians who continue to struggle on less than $2 a day. Making life even more difficult, those citizens have been coping in recent months with an overall 9% increase in food prices and 8% increase in fuel costs that are resulting once again from increasing prices of these commodities on the global market. And of course, this sends us back to be reminded of what happened in 2008 with the La Vie Chère crisis that debilitated Haiti's stability. Further, even though funds are being dispersed, most of them have been directed toward international organizations, with few Haitian organizations acquiring resources to manage Building Back Better initiatives, and the government of Haiti receiving only about 1% of dispersed funds. The results of this apparent business-as-usual approach to development have been detailed in a variety of sources, including a somewhat explosive article in the Rolling Stone published in August. Another prominent development of the past 5 months has been the growing dissatisfaction among Haitians over the presence and work of MINUSTAH, as we have heard from my two companions here. This was underscored by the recent vulgar episode of sexual abuse perpetrated by that group of Uruguayan soldiers. Only last week, a resurgence of cholera was reported, bringing the known death toll to 6,200 and the infection total to at least 440,000 people. Few now doubt that the virus was introduced into Haiti by way of MINUSTAH. Beyond doubt, cholera has fueled the MINUSTAH must go sentiment in Haiti that recently resulted in a parliamentary declaration to that end. President Martelly, in the meantime, has just requested an extension of MINUSTAH's mandate in Haiti for another year, while concurrently, as we heard from Robert Faton, underscoring his pledge to move forward to recreate Haiti's army. Popular convention has it that his army will be unveiled on November 18th, the day Haitians celebrate the Battle of Vertières, the last of the Revolutionary War. As we saw in the Washington Post earlier this week, on its editorial page, this has induced serious heartburn, particularly among those who experienced the work of Haiti's disgraced and disbanded army, whose main and perhaps only mission was to make war upon the people of Haiti. So where's the good news? Is the glass at least somewhat halfway full? Well, there are positive developments. First and foremost, of course, is the recent confirmation of Martelly's third prime ministerial nominee, Gary Conille, and as of yesterday, the emplacement of his government into office. Haiti is still on the international travel itinerary, with positive attention that it has not been forgotten. Among visitors in the past 2 months have been Michaël Jean, former Governor General of Canada, who is now UN Special Envoy of UNESCO for Haiti, and Queen Sofia of Spain. Is this a renewal of the long-dormant Haiti-Spain axis? Apart from tangible benefits these visits bring, simply keeping Haiti in the public eye is important. In the north of Haiti, work continues on the new industrial park with the goal of having the South Korean textile firm Seiya Trading and its operations up and running sometime in 2012. That operation is supposed to bring up to 20,000 jobs to Haiti and perhaps serve as a stimulant for others to come. Throughout the country, President Martelly has been a traveling roadshow promoting decentralization, agricultural production. In fact, in late August, he proclaimed Agricultural Week, and tourism development. He has created a Presidential Council for Investment and Economic Development, co-chaired, once again, by Bill Clinton. In spite of Martelly's efforts, however, progress has been slow, and the infernal dichotomy in Haiti between food security and food sovereignty continues, with Haiti remaining highly dependent on costly food imports or on handouts from the international community that are detrimental to the development of Haitian agriculture. Allow me to conclude with a brief mention of the status and whereabouts of two highly prominent Haitians who returned to their country earlier this year. First, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. True to his word, at least so far, that he was returning to engage in education, former President Aristide has maintained a low profile until last week when he emerged from relative seclusion to meet with Martelly. He has apparently been working on reopening the university he sponsors through his foundation. And in spite of his alleged house arrest, sightings of former dictator Jean-Claude Duvalier in classy restaurants and everywhere else in the hills above Port-au-Prince abound. His judicial process seems to be either creeping at a turtle's pace or in complete abeyance. And he, too, in the company of his high-profile lawyer, also met with Martelly the past week. Indeed, President Martelly has initiated a crusade of sorts to meet with Haiti's living past presidents, be they elected, selected, declared for life, or having assumed that position as part of a military junta. As international observers in the Haitian press and media comment on the surge of key political positions within Haiti of sons and daughters of former Duvalier ministers and other officials, and of cronies of military regimes, I am reminded of a Haitian proverb. Chaque moun qui rive vini ak moun pal. Each person who arrives comes with his own friends. It is not yet fully apparent how Mr. Martelly and his friends will govern Haiti, and if those sons and daughters of those who formerly governed Haiti as a kleptocratic and authoritarian state will pursue a similar approach or will function within the parameters of Haiti's, albeit still quite weak, democracy. That democratic path stands to be severely tested, it seems. Whether or not it will stand up to the test, only time will tell. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for some very interesting and provocative ways to look at Haiti moving forward. I'd like to pose a question to the panelists and the prerogative of the chair, and also because I too feel that we are at a crossroads where the country could go in many directions. But if we, in fact, believe that despite the efforts of the international community, an army will be declared, there is still the issue of paying for it, and the money is not there to pay for it unless the international donors are agreed to use that $95 to $100 million to support this institution as opposed to working with the police. I agree, Robert, that of course crime is the threat. But two questions. One, nobody has mentioned the fact that Haiti shares an island with the Dominican Republic. And if you talk to the other side of the island, they're very frightened. Without going into the history of the legacy of Haiti-Dominican relations, there is a threat on the Dominican side if an army comes back. There is a concern because if chaos erupts, the closest place that people will go to is into the Dominican Republic. I mean, that is an ongoing issue. What can an army do, in fact, if you were to open one up, except to become a force to stop people from going into exile? I guess I'm very curious to hear what the international community, especially from Jorge, having been a former assistant defense minister, would do. We have this process which created a much more robust Latin American presence in MINUSTAH. What is the role of our regional colleagues who have spent about the last 30 years creating effective civil-military relations, trying to assist a neighbor, not the United States, but our colleagues in the region, from recreating a past that obviously has a very ugly history. So I'm going to ask you if you would like to comment, each of you, and
Jorge, before you go, if I could put another question on the table, because the issue in almost any post-conflict situation, and indeed throughout Latin America, wherever you look, is the need to strengthen institutions as the sort of underpinning of democratic governance, and as also an explanation for why, to the extent that citizens are unsatisfied with the functioning of democracy, it's because of weak or insufficient institutions. So I guess the question is in the realm of how. What is it that the international community could have or should have done in Haiti to strengthen institutions, or is it simply, a case of the old cliche about, leading a horse to water but not being able to make it drink? I mean, what are the limits and the obstacles to the construction of institutions in a place like Haiti, and perhaps, from there more globally? Anyway.
Sure. Just very briefly, and I would also like to have my colleagues speak on this. Specifically on the question of the army, it seems to me this is a very clear-cut issue. It seems to me all countries, all sovereign countries, have the perfect right to do as they please in terms of establishing armed forces or not. That, it seems to me, the issue whether this should be done or not is not something that should be voted on in the United Nations. Now, so in that sense, the Haitian government, democratic elected government, is in its perfect right to put this on the table. Now, a separate matter is who pays for it. If that government is not able to pay for it and is asking the international community to pay for it, well, then those who are being asked to pay for it, it seems to me, have the legitimate right to evaluate whether that is a good thing or a bad thing. And again, to go back to the question of the police, it has taken an enormous amount of time. The original goal, I think, was to have 14,000 men and women in the Haitian National Police by this year. That goal will not be met. It is at 10,000. Now, the notion you can create an army out of thin cloth, if you haven't been able to set up a national police, it's a questionable proposition. Forget the politics, just in terms of the organizational challenge this entails. So, that is on there. On the second point, on the question of institutions that Cindy has brought up, it seems to me, obviously, state capacity is a very broad term. Now, in this sense, I'm extremely Weberian. The state should have a monopoly of the use of force. In that sense, security is a key term. In Haiti, security is not what it could be, and therefore, strengthening the security sector, it seems to me, the police, the judiciary, the penitentiary system, is the key challenge. And I would put that front and center. Obviously, you need to strengthen the Ministry of Education, you need to strengthen the state as a whole, and so on and so forth. But in the end, life is about choices. And if I had to put some preferences on the table, I would say that is the key challenge. If you cannot provide security, you cannot provide much else.
Robert?
Yes. I think the idea of restoring the army is a very popular idea in Haiti. I think this is very clear to me, irrespective of your political ideology. And it's obviously in the Martelly administration has the right to reconstitute the army. There's no doubt about that. Now, I think it's imprudent. I think it leads to all of the things that I have said. I ultimately think that the international community will pay for the army. I think what the president is going to do is to present the international community with a fait accompli. And at that point, the international community, reluctantly or not, will pay the bill. I'm convinced also that this has to do with the cost of MINUSTAH. It's very expensive. Creating the army, it's $95 million. In the grand scheme of things for the international community, this is peanuts. It's a lot for Haiti, but I think we are moving inevitably, maybe slowly or maybe very quickly, to a new army in Haiti. Now, all of I've said, I still believe, but I think the fight against the army is a lost cause. Martelly is very popular. It looks good to have an army because it's a sovereign nation state. I think there's a lot of demagogy in the whole thing because ultimately Haiti is a virtual trusteeship. If there's an army that's to be paid by the international community, its budget is 70% coming from the international community. All of the financial institutions that are controlling Haiti. So, but in the psyche of Haitians, I think creating the army is a step that reestablishes the type of feeling good about being again a nation. And Martelly, I think, believes that. Genuinely believes that. I mean, in the election, he was very clear about it. It's not a new thing. There's no surprise. He was very clear that the army was going to be reconstituted. The only question is whether this is a prudent thing, and I think it's a completely imprudent and indeed dangerous thing. I don't think an army is going to be professional. I don't think an army is going to be able to control very well the borders. And the additional problem is that once you generate an army, well, where do you stop? Because you want a Marine. You want an Air Force. I mean, if you have to control, if you have to be a nation, the whole business is to have planes, have to helicopters, and the whole shebang. And I think this is a mistake. But I think it's a mistake that is going to be, that will materialize. And I really think that the international community will support it eventually. Now, in the question of institutions, this is a very complicated problem because not only did you have the earthquake that destroyed already very fragile institutions, but you have to reconstitute the semblance of a state. And I think this is where Michel Martelly has gains his popularity. I mean, you have to remember Préval was kind of an absent president, especially after the earthquake. Martelly is everywhere. He's covering the terrain. He's at school, he's in the provinces, he goes abroad, he comes back, and he has a wife who does a wonderful public relation job. They are very good at it. And those things have changed the perception that there is something, maybe you disagree with him, but at least he's doing something. And Martelly is very much the man of action. He has that kind of burlesque personality inherited from Sweet Mickey, and he's very smart at playing both when convenient. When Martelly is abroad, he's the president. Respectable, he talks well, he's sympathetic, he's charming. When he's with Haitian, he's Sweet Mickey, which sometimes plays very well. But those things are kind of dangerous because to me, Martelly is the kind of populist. And populist can lead to, some sort of, as we say in French, une dérive. And the question is whether Parliament and other institutions are capable of having a check on the president. And I'm not sure, because I think the president is extremely popular. And when you're extremely popular, you know, as he said in his song, nous toutes, c'est Matéli. And that's a problem for me.
Well, there are a few loose ends to tie up here, I think, maybe. One would be, I would not assume that Martelli does not have some funding available, at least to begin the Army. As Robert said, he has some very powerful forces behind it. The government of Haiti is not completely destitute. It does generate some funding, Petro-Caribe money and that sort of thing. So, and if you look at the $95 million, I mean, there's some things in there that could easily be shed if your real intent is to create an army. You could probably hold off giving pension money to former soldiers, money that was stolen, of course, by their leaders a couple of decades ago. And this idea of using Haiti's civic service constitutional mandate to kind of create a kind of a stream of ready young people to join into the Army, that could be shed as well. So I'm not convinced that there isn't funding available, at least to begin, to jumpstart it, but then the maintenance costs will call for international funding most likely. In terms of the Dominican side, I can understand the concern. And of course, the concern on the Haitian side is one of those factors that kept the thought of having an army open over all these years, with Dominican soldiers periodically rounding up Haitians and dumping them across the border and massing on the border. I mean, this makes Haitians feel very insecure as well. My druthers, of course, would have been that the Dominicans would have taken the lead from the Haitians in 1995 and disbanded their own army. But I don't think that's a very realistic thing to think about. In terms of strengthening institutions, apart from institutions of security, I would blame the international community very strongly for weakening Haiti's institutions, state institutions, by adapting development strategies that have periodically and systematically actually bypassed the state. I can recall when Aristide was first elected and his government was begging for funds to try to help support ministries and strengthen ministries and deliver services to citizens and work on the social contract, that the patterns of working through NGOs and international organizations were so strongly enrooted already that they just kept in place. And this is what I referred to as development as usual in my comments. So I think and I think, in fact, as Robert said, the Haitian state has been virtually absent. I don't think this has really engendered a great deal of enthusiasm among Haitians over democracy. You vote for governments and they don't deliver. They're absent. They don't improve your lives. They don't provide services. So I think a big challenge for any government in Haiti, including the current one, is to find a way of delivering services before people get fed up with you as well. Now, you know, the international lingo on this for the past several years has been that Haiti's in the lead. We're going to support the Haitian actors and so on. I would hope that part of this would be in strengthened partnerships where NGOs with capacity and for-profit organizations with capacity, rather than simply getting contracts and going out and doing their things, are required as part of their results to have strengthened government institutions so that they can render contracts. And if you function on things like education, health, and other areas of personal security and being able to match talents and opportunities, your need for security investment is going to diminish, and your concern over that will diminish. As people improve their status of living, these other needs will fall to the wayside. I would argue very much so that had the international community worked effectively with the Provincial government before the earthquake, a lot of things in Haiti today would be very different.
Okay, well, lots of food for thought. I've seen a couple of hands. Let me recognize those that I've already seen and take a list of other people. Let me start with Carlos Portales, and there's a gentleman in the back of the room, and Stanley Lucas, and the gentleman next to him, and Dan. So I have 5 people who want to comment. Please we have till 11 o'clock, but to give everybody a chance, it would be great to limit your questions to questions.
Thank you very much. Son? I think you have touched the very important problems of Haiti, and I think the three presentation and introduction was very enlightening. But I would like to ask two questions on the main topics. Why this question of army and police? If they have a police in process of building process, why the government do not like this police? Is too independent? Is too inefficient? Or to whom the police respond? So the idea of having an army is having their own army. That's the problem, because if you are going to create a new corps, you will need people. Or are those people going to be the former military, the former officials? When we are talking about an army, are we talking about the return of the old army? Or are we talking about a new institution that is going to be built not on a consensual basis, not with this vetting procedure that have the police? I think that is the key question, because an organization like the police could be strengthened to perform some of the function that an army could perform. I know very well the case of Chile. We have a militarized police that plays the control of frontiers and a lot of other things, and have a lot of implements, but has their own institution. So the question of the police vis-a-vis the army is a question of control. That's my impression. And the second question related to the comments of Professor Maguire. Is the Petrocaribe money going to go to Martelly? Is that clear? I don't know. The second problem is about the state capacity, and here, well, I think the last comment were very helpful. We got the impression in Chile several years ago from our mission there that the working of a non-governmental organization was so independent, and the working of international organization was so well structured. Even the connection between MINUSTAH and other international organizations practically didn't exist. That Haiti was a case of several institutions working in parallel with no connection among them. And that, before the earthquake, was weakening the state. Then we have the buildings, and the people disappeared. So how is possible to recreate a bureaucracy? Because we are talking about a bureaucracy, first of all. It's not the question of the president in a public relation mood, because that could be done, but that don't mean governance. You need a bureaucracy to govern. And then the old question returns, because most of the explanation for sending money only through NGOs and directly by international organizations was, well, because this money is going to be stolen by the bureaucracy. So the question of corruption and transparency. But you cannot have a state if you don't have a bureaucracy. You have to have probably a new ethos in the bureaucracy, but you need that bureaucracy. If not, you are not going to have an independent development. So how do you think it's possible to combine this interest decision to build a state apparatus, even a small one, and at the same time to redirect the international funds through this institution to build the country?
Thank you, Carlos. What I'm going to do is allow two other questions, and let's take them in groups of three, because I suspect to give our panel some time to comment. The gentleman in the back against the wall, I'm sorry, I can't. Please, by the way, if you'll say your name for the record, that would be great.
Yes, Hernan Rosenberg. I've been working in Haiti for a couple of 20 years or so, I'd like to phrase that before. And I appreciate very much the comments of the presenters. I think they were very valid. Unfortunately, they remind me of the joke, about the optimist saying we're all going to eat garbage, and the pessimist saying, it ain't going to be enough. But because that's a little bit the feeling one gets. And I wanted to venture on something that Carlos mentioned, and basically, I guess it goes to Jorge, the comment. to what extent we have exhausted the model. When the UN intervention has worked in creating a state, has been in cases like in Eastern Timor. But basically, it's out of nothing. What I think makes difficult the business in Haiti, and I immediately illustrate what I'm saying this, is that you're trying to create something parallel to something that already exists and which you don't like. But there's not been agreement in stating that up, which is along the lines of what Carlos was mentioning. I mean, the bureaucracy as it exists, which is fairly irrelevant, it's, I mean, if you come and say, well, you have to have, access to the public or whatever, but they don't function that way. So maybe that's part of the problem. So you have the UN and the international groups pushing. And I live this, the business of the uncoordination of cooperation is well known and has been documented to death. We tried to do that in health. At the time I was working with American Health. So we had this meeting and everybody agreed that we have to coordinate. The Minister of Health was there, everything is fine. Until we said what has to be done. And the Minister of Health said, very simple, you just give us a check. Okay? And when we said, well, as diplomatically as possible, but basically it hasn't worked, why would it work now? His position was, well, if you don't trust us, then there's nothing more to talk about. And I think that this is really the key point. When you have an existing organization, good, bad, or indifferent, doesn't matter, how do you adjust that organization so that it will dissolve or will adapt to these things that are coming from the back? And I think that is a key issue. So in other words, with the best intentions, a number of people can come with big checks and whatever else, but it's going to be facing a situation where you do have a government that has something to say and point their sovereignty, which I think is the only reason for the army. I mean, everybody agrees it's not going to be a war between Haiti and the Dominican Republic. But the army is like a symbol of, okay, this is ours and nobody's going to touch it. And I think that that's the way one has to look at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Stanley Lucas on my list.
Thank you. I am Ambassador Lucas, Special Advisor to President Martelly. I heard a lot of things this morning. First, we will launch the Army on November 18, so I can confirm that for you. All the legal paperwork has been done, and we are working with 4 allies that will assist us in the building of the Army. It's regrettable that when I look around the table, I see at least 4 people sharing from the same school of thoughts. So next time I hope that the government is there, and also other schools can be represented. My friend from Chile, I'm sure that after the bloody army of Pinochet make the coup, when the Social Democrats came to power, you have the same doubts and the same questions. Today, you have a modern army, and they were able to assist the Chilean after the earthquake. We wish to do the same. One thing I think, when you observe, for example, when U.S. Army went to Iraq or to Afghanistan, the first thing that they do, the Department of Defense does, they put an exit strategy together. In the case of MINUSTAH, there is no exit strategy. Success is about the exit strategy. You build a national army, you build a national police force, and you can go back home. I think the same thing is valid for Haiti. Even General Elito, the last commander of MINUSTAH, stated that even the police at 20,000 members cannot ensure the security of our borders and our territory. This commander of MINUSTAH stated in 2007 that we need an army. So the third point is that the Haitian National Defense Force comes directly from the people. On the Campbell Trail, Martelly heard again and again about the need to reclaim national sovereignty and reinstate an army. Surprisingly, this was one of the top issues of the people. I myself, I do dozens of radio interviews weekly, and thousands of Haitians who will echo this call. 90%, according to the recent poll of Haitians, they want the army back. Second, the UN mission in Haiti, MINUSTAH, has received more than $3.5 billion in funding over 7 years and has limited results. What they do have is a track record of being involved in scandal after scandal, from cholera to brutal rape of a 19-year-old man. This demonstrates a pattern of mismanagement. And unfortunately, the MINUSTAH has become a destabilizing force. According to many of you, you stated that. The Haitian people are fed up and would prefer to have MINUSTAH phase out. 36% of Haitians would like to see MINUSTAH out right now, and 64% phase out it will take 4 or 5 years. We were unable to pick up the pieces after the earthquake. The U.S. military had to come and provide stability and manage ports and airports and give food to the people. We sit on 3 fault lines and hurricane path. We are going to need to be able to copy with disasters, and we currently cannot. This is typically a military function. And finally, most important perhaps, Haiti is a sovereign country. Why wouldn't we have our own protection force? Why wouldn't Haiti have the right to defend itself? I'm not sure why you'd be advocating against a country's right to defend itself. And Joanna, as you know, the past you stated many things, and in the Dominican Republic, you know, we had the story where the Dominicans in the 30s killed 30,000 Haitians, and this thing is still there. And I think Maguire mentioned it a couple of times. The Dominican army is very aggressive toward our borders. So I think the question should be today, how can we assist Haiti in building, just like Chile, a democratic force, respectful of the Constitution and the elected official of the country? That's the debate.
Thank you. I'm going to let the panel respond. There's a lot to talk about, so in whichever order, who would like to speak first, please go ahead.
I'll be happy to. Yes, no, I've made quite clear from the beginning. It seems to me every state has the perfect sovereign right to establish its armed forces, and it seems to me that is not something on which other actors should be consulted. The question is who pays, and if the Haitian armed forces or the Haitian army is to be financed by the international community, in that case, it is perfectly legitimate. That becomes a question as to whether that is advisable or not. So it's not a question of sovereignty. That, it seems to me, is quite clear, and we should put it off the table. The other thing that it seems to me is perfectly reasonable, that in the long term, it seems to me, Haiti needs its own armed forces. The question is whether today, with the challenges it has, and given the inability to set up a fully manned Haitian national police, it takes, I take it, about a year to add 800 or 900 men and women to the Haitian National Police, giving the vetting process. How can we move forward on an army and eventually a navy and an air force if it has been so difficult and so complicated to set up a police? That is the question, it seems to me.
Yeah. On the issue of the bureaucracy, I think given the very scarce resources that Haiti has, there should be priorities. In other words, you're not going to rebuild the full panoply of a state overnight. So I think the government should establish 3 or 4 key priorities. The government has been talking about the 4 E's. That may even be too big for the government in terms of an immediate creation of a bureaucracy. So I think there should be absolute priorities, and this is where the bureaucracy should begin to be built. In other words, whether it's agriculture, whether it's the economy, whether it's electricity, whatever decision is made, this is what we are going to target. Then this is where you put most of your resources to begin the recreation of a bureaucratic apparatus that can make sense. It's going to take a long time, and you don't have many competent bureaucrats. That's why you can't go all over and say we're going to have it in health, we're going to have it in agriculture, in you have to concentrate it on very few key targets. I think that's the way to go. Now, I completely agree with the whole notion that the foreign community has contributed to the emasculation of the state. Most of the money that is given goes to the NGOs. Even in the period of Reconstruction, of the $2 billion that have been given, only $300 million have been going to the state. So there is no doubt that if we continue that way, we are reproducing the past, and you're not going to have any type of state capacity. So the issue is, what are the key priorities? You put the money there and you build that small bureaucracy that can do it initially. And hopefully that will have some kind of virtuous cycle that once you create that, it can spread. Now on the army, I agree totally with you that this is popular in Haiti. Where we disagree fundamentally is whether it's advisable. That's the difference. I agree. Martelly said it during the campaign. Martelly says it now. There is no change. And I think that virtually all Haitians, you said 90%, I'm not surprised. The question is whether this is the right choice. I'm in the minority. And I'm in the minority because of the weight of history. I don't think the army is going to do anything but, in the medium term, be what it used to be. And that, to me, is a mistake. I think we have in Haiti that kind of very nationalistic feeling, which is all fine. But the fact is that Haiti, at the moment, is a virtual trusteeship. Recreating the army with the money coming from external sources, I don't see that as an independent army. The budget, 70% of the budget is coming from abroad. If you create an army, then you're going to beg for the money. And you're telling me, well, we have to have sovereignty. Let us be serious. We don't have sovereignty. That's the reality. We don't like it as Haitian, which is a very normal reaction. But the reality is that we are not a sovereign nation, whatever we want to say. But I know that you can play on the Haitian psyche because you can go back to Vertières, you can go back to 1804. But that is not going to resolve the problems of 2011. This is something that plays well politically. It is the obvious thing to say, but I think it's the wrong decision. Now, I hope that if the army, and I think, you confirm what I thought, that the army is going to come, whether I like it or not. I'm completely, irrelevant to the issue. And it's going to be paid by external forces. I'm convinced of that, whatever the external world is saying. So that is going to happen. I hope that you're right, that you're going to get a professional army. But the comparison with Chile, I think, is wrong. Chile has institutions. In Haiti, we do not have them. And the coup in Chile was an aberration in a very long history. So, and Chile has many more resources. Just look, for instance, in terms of institutions, what happened in the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 and the earthquake in Chile. You can't compare it. So,
you're pessimistic and I'm optimistic.
Well, the weight of history makes me look at differently than you. I hope you're right. So I'll let Bob know.
I think the first question asked was a very important one. I don't have an answer to it necessarily, but the question was, why does it seem that the government of Haiti does not like the police? And my understanding is that the current government of Haiti has gone out of its way not to give votes of confidence to the police, that the esteemed director of the police has been isolated. Well, you might say it's not true, but I'm hearing from other informed sources that it is true. Okay, so we can debate it. Can I answer the question, please? And incidentally, this is a book launch. All of us here are authors of with chapters in the book. When there are chapters written by your friends, they can be invited to the table. Okay? Now, I think another important point was raised by the gentleman in the back. The word trust. Trust is going to be imperative in this relationship. And one of the reasons you're not going to fund a military is because you don't trust it. Okay? Any investor is not going to fund something where he or she thinks the investment is not a good one, a good solid one. And in my view, I find it quite tragic that although Martelly did engender a great deal of enthusiasm and support at the beginning, viewed as a man of action, an action figure who was going to take the bully pulpit and move forward, this whole idea of the army has quickly eroded that feeling within the international community. and is from the international community that Haiti, like it or not, following what Robert Fatton has said, needs the fraternity of the international community to be able to develop the country. The loudest and shrillest voices have been heard throughout the history of Haiti and have dominated the agenda. I would question the 90% factor. I would say that we must remember as well that very few people voted in the Haitian election, as traditionally the turnout is much higher than 26%, double or triple that. So I think many Haitians are also taking a kind of a wait-and-see attitude. If I were advising the president like you do, I would advise him that social contract is the most important thing to move forward on.
Thank you. I just want to make one comment about the military, because one of my jobs in the U.S. government was demobilizing the Army and looking at the records of it. And one of the biggest breaks in the social contract with the former soldiers was that of the 6,000 people who were serving or listed on the rolls of the armed forces of Haiti, not one of them was given their pension. And it was a major source of discontent, because many people who were serving in the military had an expectation of getting their pension, and there was no resolution at the time when the military was demobilized to provide them with any vested interest that they had. And I know the U.S. government was very torn, as was the rest of the international community, as to whether that was to be paid by the international community as an obligation of the international community or not. And a lot of the discontent was, in fact, not so much the demobilization of the Army, but the failure to meet the obligations of the state for people who had served at the time. And even the formation of veterans groups after the demobilization was quashed. And their main complaint was, give us our pension. So the fact that you're going to undertake an institution that is not, capitalized in any way, which will take recurring costs over and over and over again. Just another thing is that Chile has a law which actually gives a baseline fund to the military, the Ley de Cobre Libre, which in fact provided resources historically for the armed forces. There's no equivalent or any resource that could even support that. So I think that's the basis of some of the comments. I have three other people on my list. There's a gentleman sitting next to Mr. Lucas. I have Dan Whitman and Diana Negroponte. And if there are others, please raise your hand so I can put. Is that Blair in the back? Blair Glenn, of course. Okay. So let's take those questions, please. And the lady in the back.
My name is Hector Luisi. I was not going to intervene, but as a citizen of Uruguay, I feel I must. Because all three panelists have referred to the incident regarding Uruguayan sailors, members of the Uruguayan Navy. I'm afraid that perhaps you don't have all the facts, so let me share them with you. 4 sailors were caught in a video. There was no rape in that video. The 4 sailors were arrested and charged with grievous bodily harm. The commanding officer of the outpost was immediately removed and severely disciplined. The president of Uruguay immediately wrote a groveling letter of apology to the president of Haiti, saying that the law in Uruguay would be taken to its utmost consequences. The foreign minister of Uruguay in the General Assembly of the United Nations devoted a good part of his speech to apologizing very sincerely indeed. We Uruguayans, myself included, are deeply ashamed at what happened, and given the Uruguayan tradition in serving in the United Nations peacekeeping force, going back to the very first peacekeeping force in Kashmir. But then, rather interesting things happened. Number one, the alleged victim has not been made available either to the investigating magistrate or to the defense. There has been none, zero, zippo medical examinations. Then the Uruguayan authorities in Haiti were visited by Haitian legislators who suggested in no uncertain terms that with an amount of money the issue would go away. The Uruguayan authorities obviously said no. This visit was followed up by the same legislators, this time accompanied by an attorney from a U.S. law firm in Atlanta, who set the price tag at $5 million. All this, by the way, has been recorded and is on tape. The Uruguayan government has now said that it will litigate this matter fully. All Uruguayans, myself included, are now contributing to the defense of these 4 lawyers who are very, very poor and have only legal aid. And I would be very careful, particularly for people who consider themselves scholar and like academic rigor, to talk about things for which there is no proof. And I'm simply going to leave it at that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for your comments. Let me go to Dan Whitman, I believe, who had a question.
Thanks, Joanna. I'm Dan Whitman with American University. One quick question, I think. Dr. Heine refers to the $10 billion, which I think is the figure that came out of the March 31st, 2010 meeting in New York. As far as I know, less than half of that has actually been allocated. I'm just wondering if anybody knows where we stand on that 18 months later. Promises were made, and in some cases were not fulfilled. Secondly, fascinating discussion, and I'm sort of dwelling on a couple of paradoxes, or as Bob McGuire calls them, dichotomies. I think they're very fascinating, and I think 2 sides have been very effectively discussed. First of all, in the issue of stability versus progress, the notion of stability, Dr. Heine refers to the Préval achievement in being able to, or striving to promote some stability during his recent presidency, where Robert Fatton talks about the Duvalier efforts towards what he would perhaps perceive as stability, but using repression in order to do so. This is not a question, just a reflection of some of the paradoxes that I think are inherent. One question that I do have, however, Bob McGuire has talked about the bypassing of the Haitian government on the part of the donors, and attributes some of the failure, or much of the failure, to that bypassing. I believe, and I don't want to make false comparisons, I think Paul Farmer makes a similar argument in his recent book. My question is about the criticism that book has inspired. I know we're here to launch your book, but allow me to refer to another that was recently published. The Economist magazine, the New York Review of Books, and others have said about the Farmer book, very good medical doctor, not so good at social engineering. I'm wondering if you have a comment about those criticisms. Thanks.
Let's take Diana's question next, please.
Diana Negroponte, not wearing a Brookings hat, but wearing a Habitat for Humanity hat, because I'm about to go and volunteer for a week as part of that parallel. And I think much criticized institution there. Where do the institution of land registration stand at the moment?
Yes, and there were 2 other. In the back, there was a Blair Glencourse on the right side, and then this other lady at the end of the table. So, Blair.
Thank you very much, Joanna. Blair Glencourse from the Institute for State Effectiveness. 2 quick points. The first one on contracting to Professor McGuire, but all of the panelists. You talked about how we're bypassing the state, how we're substituting for capacity rather than creating it. Could you give 2 or 3 concrete ways in which we could change the contracting rules for US entities, for other international entities, in a way that would prevent that? The second point on disbursements and the low level of disbursements, one way that this has been overcome in Afghanistan, which is where we've done a lot of work, is through national level community development programs that give block grants to communities and build on the capacity at that level. What's happening at the community level in Haiti, and is that something that might work in the Haitian context? Thank you.
Thank you. And let's take a last question from this young woman at the
Hi,
end of the
thank
table.
you.
State your name, please.
Oh, my name is Véronique Pluviose, and I wanted to ask the question, if I can ask the panelists to almost reformulate their presentation from the perspective of someone who is, or a family who is actually living in one of the tents or what passes for a home in the last year and a half. So, in other words, what can we do to look at this discussion of security, whether we're talking about MINUSTAH, whether we're talking about military, from the perspective of a woman trying to provide for their family under a tarp in very, very just embarrassing conditions, and whether or not there could be a sense of urgency in terms of what the responses would be from the state, NGOs, international community, and any other actors. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we, if there are not other questions, let's turn it back to the panel to respond.
To the gentleman from Uruguay, it's a complex issue, and it seems to me all we did, we referred to the incident. None of us went into detail about what actually happened. We don't know. There was a video. It became an international incident, and that became a problem for MINUSTAH. What actually happened is a complex question, and we don't know. But all I'm saying is that for MINUSTAH, it became an embarrassing moment, and we must obviously be very careful on the, what exactly happened and the legal implications of it. But I think we were all very careful in voicing that. I didn't talk about rape. I said there was a there was a video
of grievous bodily harm, no sexual activity whatsoever.
Well, I mentioned the video and how it was covered. That's all I said. Anyway, so let's get that off the table. On the question of state capacity, the key here again is looking for ways in which the security sector in the first place and the rest of the Haitian state can be built up. There is the temptation to say, let us go through the NGOs because that is the way we can be more effective. That has been tried for a long time. It hasn't worked the way it should. So I think we are ready to try something else.
Yeah, I think the question of the tents and the people living there, I think is intimately connected to the land question, because you need to find a place where to put the displaced people. And I'm not exactly sure where the government is just being formed, so I'm not sure if that has happened or not, but this is obviously one of the key issues that the government will have to confront. The issue is not just a question of land, it's also obviously a question of jobs. Because if you move people to areas where there is no jobs, they may have a better environment, but ultimately their destitute condition will remain the same. I think that also has to be linked to the business of decentralization of the country. And one of the unfortunate things, I believe, that has happened since the earthquake is that ultimately the question of decentralizing Port-au-Prince has kind of faded in the sense that reconstruction is still being viewed as reconstructing Port-au-Prince as the capital. I wish there would have been a debate about that and whether that was a good choice. We didn't have it. I don't know if it is going to happen or not. I doubt it, given the fact that the immediacy of the earthquake has disappeared. So you have a series of questions there that are quite significant related to the land question, and the way the government is going to deal with the people living in those destitute conditions is going to tell us a lot about that government, whether they are going to be evicted without finding the right place to go, or whether they are going to be evicted, or not evicted, but moved in environments that are much better. So that will give us a sense of whether there is the beginning of a social contract that has been established within the population and the government. On the question of Uruguay, we may have said something that were inaccurate. I didn't know, for instance, the issue of the tape that you have asking for money. It doesn't surprise me, but I didn't know about it. So that is a very interesting twist. But on the other hand, the very fact that Uruguay apologized so profusely must entail that something bad happened. Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's what I wanted to say about that particular case.
I thank you for the clarifications on the Uruguay case. These things do tend to get very complicated, and I think another complicated case that just began last week is the case of the alleged human rights abuses in the prison in Les Cayes, and that's going to trial too. We'll see maybe if that can go through a legitimate process. In terms of the Blair, where are you, Blair? I think your questions were kind of addressed to me. In terms of the contracting rules, I'm not a functionary working in USAID, but I do understand that agency's contracting rules are extremely complicated and tend to fall in favor of organizations that have the sophistication and experience in navigating through them, and that this is one of the reasons why organizations in Haiti and even in the diaspora, I understand, are at an extreme disadvantage. I would reckon that it's the responsibility of USAID to do something about that. And something that could be done, I think, almost immediately is that Haitians be brought into the process where ideas are kicked around in terms of what priorities ought to be, and that priorities are not developed by international organizations and imposed upon Haiti. There was a very interesting case in 2009 when there was a new education program launched by USAID in Haiti. The Minister of Education at the time attended. He thanked the U.S. Ambassador profusely for the funding, and then he said, of course, we do have a 5-year education plan, and this is not one of our priorities. I just think there needs to be greater communication, greater respect, and greater participation there. In terms of community-level block grants, I think it's still the business as usual where, international organizations with the funds solicit or recruit local partners to work with them, and they do get some funding to carry out things locally. One of the programs funded by USAID, which gets a lot of publicity and in a positive way, is something called WINNER, which is a watershed, kind of comprehensive watershed rehabilitation program. And my understanding is that this is one of these examples where community groups are engaged with that grantee, which is managing the U.S. government grants, to do things on the local level. But I would challenge the donors to say there are ways of working directly with community organizations in Haiti. The Inter-American Foundation has been doing it for 30 years, and you help build capacity at the community when you work directly with the organizations and they're not simply recruited as people who can enact your projects.
Thank you. Are there other questions, comments? No?
We didn't answer his question.
The donor aid, if you happen to know. On the percentage that's actually been dispersed of the 10 billion.
I mentioned it in my talk that
there is, on the Special Envoy's website of the United Nations, there is a very good and very accurate charge of income that has actually been deposited by the international community and actually income dispersed. And it has increased from the early days, but it's still a slow process. And I think it goes back to a question, again, of the institutional capacity to actually bring it in and to disperse it, and the complication of mechanisms as opposed to the lack of goodwill. I mean, one positive news is there's going to be a new university that's opened in the north in January 2012 that was the contribution of the Dominican Republic, being managed by a Haitian coalition in Limonade, Haiti, and it's going to have a fairly large capacity and an opportunity to do more training, and it's consistent with the priorities of bringing more education into the north, which is a great gap, and the fact that so much of the infrastructure of education around Port-au-Prince was so destroyed by the physical impact of the earthquake.
Just clarifying this, the 9 or 10 billion figure out there is divided into two kind of categories. One is that which was supposed to have been dispersed over 18 months following the donors conference. That, I believe, was either 5.2 or 5.3 billion. It included pledges made by governments, international institutions, and some private organizations, such as Interaction, for example. Last week, in checking the UN Special Envoy's website, it has posted that 43% of the 5.6 billion pledged by public entities has now been dispersed. Now, that's money that was pledged over a period of 18 months, tracking from April 1st, okay? So, I mean, we've about reached 18 months. The track record is poor. But then again, conditions in Haiti do not necessarily precipitate or create a great deal of enthusiasm for disbursement during a protracted election season and now a protracted period when there was no functioning government. So it's a complicated situation.
Well, I'd like to, unless our co-authors, yes, there's one question in the back. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, Roxanne Pezib with the International Rescue Committee. I was just curious to know what the future of the Interim Haiti Reconstruction Commission is. I know its mandate is up October 21st, so I was wondering if you could speak to that.
My understanding is it's continuing.
Yeah. Well, I think its lifetime has been extended, but these dates seem to be a bit fuzzy to me as well. I mean, when former President Clinton accepted the agreement to be the UN Special Envoy to Haiti in April of 2009, he accepted it for 2 years. 2 years have passed. He's still UN Special Envoy to Haiti, and I haven't seen anything, for example, about a formal extension of that commitment. There was initially, from the Martelly government, some pretty strong criticism of the IHRC, much of it, I think, warranted, but I think the organization will continue its work. As I mentioned in my presentation, there has been another organization set up, a council to advise, I guess it's the president of Haiti, on economic development and investment matters. And as far as I know, the co-chairs of that are still Bill Clinton and the gentleman who has just been appointed as the foreign minister in the new cabinet, a fellow named Laurent Lamothe. Mm-hmm. So this is another institution that's being formed. What the relationship between the two may or may not be is certainly not clear as that moves forward. Whether it's being viewed in some quarters as perhaps a way of replacing the IHRC eventually. But the initial plan was that after 18 months, all of this would segue into an HRC, Haitian Reconstruction Commission. And, of course, those plans got waylaid by delays from the international perspective and from the Haitian perspective. So I think that original game plan is pretty much off the books.
Well, I'd like to thank all of the speakers on behalf of the Wilson Center and the Center for Strategic and International Studies. I think we've had a very enlightened discussion, and the book is certainly a tool that you can use to reference what has been discussed this morning. What's always challenging about talking about the Haiti case is that it is unique in some ways, but also an important opportunity for the rest of the community in Latin America, not only the United States, but rather our neighbors who have been active in the security component, to visit the issue of a state that has such chronic problems and find ways in which to support with dignity and respect the citizens of Haiti and their needs moving forward. So for all of you who've come out on this rainy morning, and to my colleague Cindy Arnson, who was also gracious enough to do all the work, and to her colleagues, Adam Stubbits, who worked on this, and Michael Graybiel from CSIS, I'd like to thank you and give our panelists an applause.